Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, taking a look at our projections for the new AP Top 25 poll, which will be released on Sunday. Trivia question. Eye on College Basketball podcast. College basketball season starting soon. They've got a little game they could trivia time. So shout out to them. When was the last time the Oregon Ducks were number one in the AP Top 25 poll?
2007?
2014?
Close. They never actually made it to 1 in 14, but
2012?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
In the 2012 season, the Oregon Ducks made it to number one for a single week.
What a week it was.
Loss dropped to number 5. The Oregon
They
Ducks
lost to Stanford?
The Oregon Ducks as a program have only been number one in the AP poll for 8 different poll releases. 7 of them were in the 2010 season, leading into their eventual BCS National Championship game loss to Cam Newton and the Auburn Tigers. The other one being in 2012, where interestingly enough, they actually finished ahead of Notre Dame in the final AP poll after going on to win the rest of their games and after Alabama ran past Manti Te'o's girlfriend in the BCS National Championship game that season. I think Eddie Lacy had her in a spin move. Yeah, Lene Kakua, we will always remember you. And I am projecting that Oregon will take over the number 1 spot with like a business-like short week. Yeah, I mean, there is the but it's Purdue side of it, sure. But I come out of this thinking for Oregon, like, look, that's exactly what you wanted Oregon to do on a short week after a huge emotional win against Ohio State. 35, it was like 21-0 at halftime. 35-0 is your final score. Just line them up and knock them down. It's kind of what the season that Oregon's in right now.
Yep. Show up, don't break a sweat, don't get hurt, go home. Perfect recipe. They did everything perfect.
Yeah. I've got question from the tailgate. Will they be unanimous? I don't know. There's always a stray.
No, Georgia's going to get votes for the
Yeah.
resume.
I've got Oregon at 1, Penn State at 2, Ohio State at 3. That would be Penn State and Ohio State just moving up a spot. I've got Georgia moving up to 4, Texas falling to 5. They could fall behind Miami and end up at 6, but I don't know how the AP voters are going to ultimately deal with the Longhorns, a team that they were almost unanimous in having as number 1 just 1 week ago. Whether they would fall behind the Longhorns, but whether the Longhorns would fall behind the Hurricanes, we will see. That's one of the first like debate spots, I think, in the top 5.
I feel like Georgia runs to 3 at least, just because of the Clemson and now the Texas wins.
So they jump ahead of Ohio State?
Yeah, because Ohio State does not have nearly the resume that they have as far as wins.
How far does Bama drop?
I've got Bama dropping to 15. They basically
behind Indiana and behind.
They settle ahead of Boise State.
Are they ahead of Illinois?
And Indiana jumps Boise?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's fair.
I've got BYU going up too.
BYU think, should be in the top 10.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Indiana should be in the top 10.
Look,
they should be.
The thing about a top 10, Tom, is you can only have 10 teams in there.
Oh, don't come at me with this math again. But who are the 10? Like Oregon, Penn State, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas. There's 5. Miami is 6. That leaves 4 spots. Those 4 spots, 2 of them should be reserved for Iowa State, BYU, and then a 3rd for Indiana. So you can still put when you're
I don't think the AP voters are going to kick LSU out.
No, but they don't have to put them higher than the undefeated teams.
I'm making a projection of how the voters are going to.
How many games do these teams? I'm not yelling at you.
Yeah.
How many games do these teams need to win before you start taking them serious?
I think with every week, if you have a 0 in the loss column, you end up moving up as a matter of principle. The only sort of like twist to that, might be Iowa State just because it got really hairy against UCF. But I've got like BYU moving up. I've got Indiana moving up. I've got Army moving up. I've got Navy moving up. So, yeah, I think that the undefeated teams will continue to rise every single week in the rankings, that they remain undefeated.
If Tennessee is ranked ahead of Iowa State, BYU, or Indiana, we need to riot. I want to see riots in the streets on Sunday afternoon.
Well, I mean, if Texas told us anything, just throw bottles and you can get your way.
Yeah, true. Go to the AP building in your neighborhood and throw plastic bottles at it until they vote the way they're supposed to.
In terms
there are
of
AP buildings in every neighborhood, right? Like that's how the AP works.
That's not how the AP works.
Oh, I haven't taken civics in a long time.
They don't cover the Associated Press and civics.
Maybe they should. Maybe that's what's wrong with this country.
No, they covered it in news writing, a class that I know well because I had to take it twice at North Carolina. It was too hard the first time. I was having a tough semester.
Chip just kept writing editorials. Like, well, I thought this was a column class.
In terms of the edges of the rankings, again, I think it's a Vanderbilt, Colorado conversation. Vanderbilt was 26 in voting points last week. I've got them moving in. If there's a big wave, because Colorado, I mean, put a number on Arizona in Tucson. I watched not all of that game, but when I was watching, I was pretty impressed. Not that Arizona is this bastion of like consistency, but Colorado's defense kind of had
they're playing
Noah Fafita in hell for a little bit.
Yeah. The defense has been playing better for a few weeks now,
Yeah. So I was pretty impressed with that. Would not be surprised at all if Colorado ends up breaking through. I've got Missouri, even though they won, giving up a couple spots. In part, Tom, like you said, I just think Army and Navy are going to, just keep jumping up ahead of some of these teams. And then Pitt. Yeah, not a ton of adjustments, even though we still had a lot of thrills throughout the top 25. Any burning questions you got?
Outside of Michigan, who's falling out?
Just Michigan.
Yeah. All right.
And some of that is a lack of options, because in last week's rankings, some of those teams that were getting a lot of support already and showing up on a lot of ballots, like Nebraska, nope. Arizona State, nope. Oklahoma, nope. Washington State, maybe, but they just beat Hawaii. They're a one-loss team. I've got my eye on you. Iowa, nope. Texas Tech, yikes. WTF, Texas Tech.
Let me just dance on the grave. Told you they weren't good. Now, granted, when I said that, I didn't mean I think they'll lose by like 30 to Baylor, but supports my theory quite a bit, I would say.
Oh, underrated storyline that I hadn't really wrapped my mind around was Billy Napier and Dave Aranda scoring big wins today.
It did. Extend Napier, DJ Lagway with big game. It's kind of a new era for the Gators. Do you think it's time to give Napier a little extension so that way he can build a program around him?
People are suggesting that for sure.
So,
yeah, I think it will be a day that the headline will be the change at number one. We will see, ultimately where Georgia lands. We will see where Texas lands, and Alabama and Tennessee will have some shuffling. But with some of the other action, a mostly calm day throughout the top rankings.
Isaac